While you might know the basics of Illustrator by now, I wanted to show you a few more tricks that will let you do more complex designs or way of using images in a way that you might not have thought of was possible. So first of all, I wanted to show you the layers palette. So you have layers in Illustrator just like you have in Photoshop, and it shows you that there's different images can be inside one layer, which is a neat way of grouping things. So even within the layer, it has layers. So it's like nested layers, which is more complicated than Photoshop, but it allows you to use that as groups. So for example, my headline is here. I can turn it on and off, but I could also drag it and pull it to the bottom so it would be below everything. I could turn it off there, same with my blue background and so on. So that's the first part I wanted to show you. Now, in the image, I have two photos that I've pulled off the internet and I've placed in here. And you notice that if I click on them, they have an X through them, which means they are what are called linked files. That means that if you submit that file to me for marking, I would not see those files because I don't have that link. Or if you email it to anybody else, they would not see it. So what you can do is you can click on Embed for the files. Then you notice it no longer says linked file, it just says image. So I'm going to embed both, and now those files won't get lost when you submit the file. So that's the first part. Now, if you have an image and you want to use it, you have a white background, you want to get rid of it, or you want to do something with it, the trick is you select it, and then you click on the Live Trace button up here. Now, the initial result might not be what you want, so you can go down here to the settings, the presets, and let's say choose color 16. It's a good start if you're working with photos. And then you can go down and say, okay, I'm going to reduce this, I'm going to take it down to fewer colors, make the image more simple. And you can reduce it down until you don't like it anymore. 9 is a little bit too much, so I think at 10 it looked good. So I'm going to go back to 10 or maybe even 11. So I'm pretty happy here. I'm going to leave it there. And sometimes you can play with this minimum area if you're tracing a complex kind of shape. So you can play with those things, but I won't go into those details too much right now. But then you click on Expand. And now this has become a graphic with different parts to it. Now if I right click and ungroup that, I can go in and I can now select different parts of it and delete them. So in this case, I can get rid of the white background and I can get rid of most of the shadows. I can sort of see up to what point I can go before I lose too much of the image. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to select a couple more bits here. There's a few pieces here and there's a few pieces in here. Choose all of those little bits and pieces. And another trick is if you've got one and you want all the same ones, you could select them all, but the problem is this color is repeated here, so you can't select everything that has the same color and delete it, or you would lose part of the image. So now I've got my little car, and I want to reselect it as a group, and I draw a box around it, and I'm going off the blue area on purpose because I'm trying not to grab that. But if I select around here, it's still selected my blue background. So now if I hold Shift key and click on the blue, it's unselected the blue and I just have my little car. I can right click and I can group it again. So now I have it as one object and I can move it around. Now if I have it as a group like this and I want to change the colors, I can go to my Live Paint Bucket tool and now I can click on it, and click on it, it turns it into what is called the Live Paint group. And what it allows me to do is whatever color I've selected, so in this case I will start with an orange, I can click on part of the image and I can add color to those parts of the image. Right? And I can choose another color and color other parts of my image. This is a quick way of adding components. You see with the red outline what is being colored. And this little dialog box next to Expand, you can turn on gap detection, which means if an area isn't perfectly closed, it will still color it. So if that's not on, you can turn that on at the little flyout menu here. Once you're all done, you can again click Expand, and you have an object that you can again ungroup and work with. So that's one part. Now the other one is I have this photo that I've embedded here, and I don't want to live trace this one because I like the sketch, but the size is awkward. And if I were to resize it, I would squish my image, which I don't want to do. So remember we had the power clip feature. So if I take a box and I draw it over the part of the image I actually want, say that's the part I actually want to keep, Then I will select that, and I will hold on Shift and select the background, select the two together, right click, make clipping mask. Now I've clipped down my image just to the part that I want. So that's a quick way of trimming an image without having to do a live trace. Now, if you're doing this and you're layering multiple objects, you might want to make this transparent. So under the little properties bar here, the appearance panel, you have opacity and it's default. If I click on that, I can take the opacity and I can make that opaque, right? Now the problem is it sort of disappears on a dark background, so it might work depending what you're doing. If you're doing a watermark, for example, that would be the way to do it. If you are wanting to layer images though, there's another trick. So if I want this to sort of dissolve into the background, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a new box. I'm going to draw a new box. I'm going to put it about the same size here. And now in this case it's green, doesn't matter. I'm going to give it a gradient. So I'm going to go to my gradient toolbar and I am going to click on my gradient. And you notice my gradient is transparent on one end and has solid black on the other end. The way I got the gradient to be transparent on one end is by clicking on the color and taking the opacity to 0. So that way I have a 0 opacity there. And I'm going to go to the black end and I'm going to make that white because my image here is white. So I'm going to bring that to white. And now I have this. Now, if I place it on top, there really isn't a whole lot of white for it to disappear on here. If I take that box and place it on top of my car, and I'm going to make the size match so that I have the gradient. I'm actually going to bring it in a little bit here. So that matches pretty well, but I'm still seeing too much here. So I can take my slider, bring that over so there's more white here, and play around with where my gradient is going to cut off for the transparency. And I can play with the drop off and so on until I'm happy with the image, the way it looks. And again, my gradient is just sitting on top. It's a separate object. If you go to your layer palette, you can see that you have this object right on top. I can actually undo that. It's called a path, which is a little bit misleading, but the Illustrator looks at it as a box, so it looks at the path on the outside. So I can turn it on off, but what I can do is I can select it and I can select my car underneath, right click and group it. So now I can move this around and no matter where I use it, it will work. One last thing is when we are doing something like a security feature on money, if you take your pen tool and you draw a line and you take your fit text to path tool, type on the path tool. So I'm going to click on the beginning here and I'm going to put my text on here. And I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to put a few more of these on. There we go. So I've got some security text on here. Now this is still pretty large. So what I might do, I might take this and I hold on my Alt key and I drag up and I've made a copy of it. So I can do that and I can do that. And again, I could make a bunch of these. So I have a little pattern here. And now I'm going to select all of these, and again I'm going to go over all of them. I have my blue background selected, which I don't want, so hold on Shift and deselect the blue background, and then I can take them all together and I can shrink this down into a little pattern, and it looks very tiny, and I can embed that on my document and it looks almost like a little graphic, but it's my watermark or my security feature, which would be hard to photocopy in detail. That's something common on the money design. And again, you might select that and you might group them together. You might change the transparency, but lots of features like that. So I hope this helps you create a more interesting design.